So Bob, let's start with you as we're having Master Smith and Master Moody work on logging in here. You've been talking to an awful lot of school owners during the pandemic and have noticed, I'm sure, a number of what Zig Ziglar would call stinky thinking. What are some of the primary things that you're seeing right now that are holding people back?
Yes, sir. Well, I mean, the first thing was getting on top of this in the beginning. So obviously there was a dramatic shift having to retain students. And that's one of the biggest problems I'm finding now is that a lot of the schools are down, 25, some 50% in their student base. And
I've heard some that are more than that.
Probably correct. Probably correct.
I should have brought the stack of mail. We just did a little personal note to former members and other recent people who had inquired, and I've got a stack of returns that's like this, and it wasn't that big a mailing. I'm guessing it's 35% are out of business. I just, I try to wean myself off of even paying attention to social media, but I got to tell you, martial arts schools out there whining and bitching and moaning. There was an ATA school just this morning. I was seeing posting tearful pictures of their kind of the last hurrah of their school, and here's the empty floor, and here's the external master Ronald Birch, whining online to the public about how he failed to adapt and his school is shutting down. It's pathetic and horrible.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of failure.
Greg, do you know Master Ronald Birch?
Yeah, I've met him before.
He's one of the COVID fatalities, apparently.
Oh, that's sad. That's sad. They didn't pay attention to what we've been telling everybody, and it's kind of unconscionable to not be paying attention to what we've been telling everybody. It's just it's a shame.
Yeah, our close friend. I mean, and seriously close friend. We went on a motorcycle trip together and stuff. Rob Wetmore. I talk about him periodically, but he was posting yesterday. Well, the state hasn't given me any money yet. The state where's my check from the state? It's like, what the hell are you talking about? Just get your ass in gear and get this thing going. But Bob, I was asking you the question. So from people you talk to right now, let's forget about the past. What are the things that are holding them back mentally? That tends to be the biggest problem, right? Is they just aren't getting themselves in gear. What are some of the issues if you were to walk through that in your mind?
The number one fallacy is that there isn't any value on virtual classes, right? So they believe that the only value is as a student actually showing up in the school. And that's absolutely not true. I mean, as we know with our current members, there is absolute value in that, especially with the kids, in certain states being confined to their homes. So they do need activity. The other thing is the reeling back the marketing. So obviously with the retention issue being the first, secondly, marketing to get in new students, it's just compounded the problem. So hence, this is where we're at with schools down 50% more.
Yeah. Well, we found some, to be fair, that adapted fairly quickly to Zoom and one thing or another. But then on the other hand, what they did is they pulled back their marketing budget, their marketing efforts, or perhaps they're 100% relying on student events for referrals and for, maybe external events and so forth. And they will talk to them 6 months later and they'll whine and say, oh my goodness, COVID has killed me. I'm down 50%. But then you look at it, my question is always, well, what's your normal dropout rate? Well, what do you mean? On a normal month, how many students do you lose? So you were at 300, and on a normal month, how many do you lose? And most of the industry has pretty crappy retention rate. So, a lot of times the answer is, well, I normally lose about 20. So if I look 5 months later, if I was at 300, I'd be down 100. I said 5 months later, right? 5 months later, I'd be down 100 if I don't replace those 20. Now, we always want the loss rate to be 1 or 2%, not 5, 6, 7%. But a lot of schools that I'm talking to, they may have adapted fairly well as far as keeping students, but they stopped marketing. And, what we teach always is, what I refer to, I stole it from Jay Abraham, is the Parthenon, having a bunch of different feeders. And it's absolutely true, in the height of this thing, which depends on how you're looking at it, was April or now, because it's cycling back around. But in the height of this thing, sure, I couldn't go to the Easter event, and there's not a Christmas pageant going on. There's not maybe as much traffic in the shopping mall, although I bet there's still a lot of traffic in the shopping mall, to be in a kiosk or something like that. But what we know is Facebook engagement went up 650%. We also know, with people working at home and so forth, we also know people started reading their email because their kids are pretending to be in school, doing remote learning. And they're paying attention to notices from teachers in school. Number two, what was happening is a lot of people were working from home. So they were having to pay attention when they were used to being in the office. So email marketing went dramatically through the roof, where, I was at the point of screw it. I, don't even want to bother. But now it's working incredibly well. Facebook marketing is working incredibly well. And then if you go through our normal grassroots, we have that great 3-hour presentation of UMass Smith on the grassroots market. If you go through all the grassroots stuff that we normally do, sure, we're not in an elementary school right now doing a PE teacher for the day, getting permission slips, doing a after school enrichment program that's converting into the school. However, we've had great results with the schools letting us do the same equivalent virtually for their kids. In fact, they're desperate for some other things for the kids to do to get them engaged. And we've had, Amanda down in small town Tennessee, she had all 23 schools that are even in a distant radius of her school, let her go in and do stuff. She hit literally every one of them in September, because again, they were desperate for stuff to do with the kids to get them re-engaged and focused and learning well during this thing. So, I got to tell you, for everybody who complains that something wasn't working, there's a bunch of other stuff that is working. The big problem that schools has, they just don't know what they're doing as far as marketing. They don't build out that Parthenon and have a lot of different pieces going on. Jeff, Matt Smith, pick up from there. What would you say the biggest handicaps are for schools right now? Let's forget screw the pooch or not, one thing or another in March or April. What are they doing right now that they really should fix?
You're on mute, Master Smith. But if I could jump in real quick, Master Oliver.
Go ahead.
Again, everybody I chat with, they want to know that one thing that's working today, all the time.
The magic pill.
The magic pill, yes, sir. And I mean, you said it, and I hope everybody, realized or picked up on what Master Oliver said when he talked about building out the Parthenon. It's just that it's just that what is working today.
And
I'm sorry, Master.
The biggest mistake everybody is making is, and I am talking about the ones that at least had it correct before pandemic. In other words, they were profitable before the pandemic. And then what they forgot to do when the pandemic hit, a lot of them relied on the government was going to take care of them either through their extra help financially, or they were going to just close them down for a short time. When you called it right from day one, you said, look, don't plan on this being opened up in 30 or 60 days. It's probably going to be into next year before things are going to get back to semi-normal. And we know that that's probably even the summer now. But what they didn't do is adapt. And the way that you got our members going so well right away is the marketing that we were doing last year that was making the big home runs. And we had schools that were getting 100 intros a month. Our lowest schools were getting 50 intros a month. So they were freaking out with trying to learn how to handle all those intros. Well, those live events and things that we were doing last year, those things we couldn't do this year. The movie theaters and things like that were shut down, that were big home runs for us, the live events and things like that. So, you found quickly that the internet was what wasn't pulling as good, even though we were doing it last year. We were getting just a little bit here and there from some of the internet stuff. you switched to pretty much a big internet presence, and then all of a sudden they started getting a lot of intros again. Well, there were some schools that were forgetting that you can do intros and enrollments virtually.
Well, they weren't forgetting. They didn't know, or they assumed it wasn't going to work, or they assumed that they couldn't ask them for a year enrollment with a big down payment via Zoom. You know, that I think that's the thing, Master Smith, is they
What
just
they said to us was, well, I can't do intros. And we said, why not? They said, well, they won't let us teach even classes in the school. And then we said, well, we've been doing intros, and we had, Amanda Olson had 30 enrollments, last month, and they were all virtually. They were all, oh, you can do them virtually. And
actually,
they say, well, how do you sell them virtually? And we go, the same way we did it live, except they were on a screen in front of us. We taught the class the same. So you just had to learn to adapt, change the intros around a little bit to do it virtually. And then we found that we had to do a combination of classroom and virtual going at the same time, that we, call simulcast, or doing a live class virtually while we're doing our in social distancing class. And that way we were able to keep our attendance up and keep them working towards that goal of black belt.
Yeah, and it also improved the show rates on the enrollment process, because now there was no excuse not to have both decision makers in front of you. So you were able to easily communicate and connect with both parents when you did the enrollment. That's what our guys have been finding.
Well,
yeah, absolutely. So
I wanted to clarify something Grandmaster Smith said, is that he said something that I just want to make sure everybody's clear about, that we weren't getting much internet traffic prior to the
yeah, we were kicking ass on search.
Yeah,
Kicking ass on
we were doing really well. What
it just accelerated.
Yeah, exactly. If you did it right, and then what you need to do is pour more gas on the flame during the time that everybody's sitting at home on their rear, because Facebook traffic was up 641%. Google AdWords traffic was up similarly. And so, we worked with all the people that we recommend, and just, really kicked ass. Some of our guys were getting 30, 40 members in March and April when this all started. So the people that weren't paying attention,
new enrollments,
guys, were and pulled in and crawled into a ball, hoping the government would save them. Well, that's why they're doing really, really bad right now.
Well, by the way, if you're stupid enough or liberal enough to think the government's going to save you ever, just, I hope you've learned your lesson this year, is all I have to say. Is as a business owner, you can never count on, PPP or some other SBA deal or something else. And in fact, I've seen people who layered on a bunch of debt this year as they let their gross fall, which is like the worst of both worlds. That's just going to accelerate the implosion if you don't figure out how to adapt. It's just really insane. But anyway, so the first lesson, by the way, the takeaway of all of this stuff is, if you're not in a mastermind environment of a bunch of smart school owners who are growth oriented and can adapt, and if you don't have a coach who's forward thinking, who adapts quickly and shows you the path in tumultuous times, and I would argue that every month and every year is tumultuous in some cases. Social media marketing wasn't working worth a crap. Everybody was all enamored with it, but we weren't really getting in enrollments a few years ago. And then some shifts happened in Facebook, and all of a sudden it was kicking butt. I would not have predicted going in that pay-per-click and SEO would have been kicking ass, say, this summer, right? Is you think, well, everything's locked down, or it's almost locked down. Are there a bunch of parents searching for martial arts lessons for their kids? Are there a bunch of adults looking? Well, the answer turned out. And the whole point was, we were paying attention to that, and on top of it, where for many people, they just wouldn't have been out there spending the money to begin with. So that's the first takeaway, is you really have to be in an environment where you adapt quickly, where other people are out experimenting as well as yourself, where you're learning the lessons. And, within our team, I mean, truth be told is, back in March when things started shifting, is we shifted the marketing immediately, had a hard time convincing even some $1 million a year schools that they should be putting money into Facebook, that they should be putting money into pay-per-click, they should be focusing on their SEO efforts, they should be ramping up their email, etc. But once we got them convinced, then we had members who would like lead the way. So we had Amanda Olson in small town Tennessee started doing a ton of enrollments from Facebook via virtual first, virtual second, virtual enrollment conference, doing a year enrollment, 500 down, 200 something a month on a 12-month enrollment. And all of a sudden, everybody else said, "Oh my goodness, well, okay, it can be done." We had Olga Keith, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school in Oregon. As soon as everything shut down, she did 13 renewals in 2 weeks. It's like, well, okay, that works just fine, doesn't it? I mean, we could go story after story after story. We had somebody else who did, I don't know, 20, I'm not going to remember the school, but 25,000 cash in the first. What's that?
Jan Lappin in Middleburg, Florida, right outside.
Yeah, that wasn't the example I was looking for, but she's a good example of how transported after school care people screwed the pooch. I had 2 schools that I was talking to. One of them had 2 locations, shut down and stopped billing everybody in transported after school. Had a 70% drop in their gross. I bet they're not even in business now. I haven't talked to him in a while because he wanted to argue for his own failure rather than take my suggestions on getting him to be successful. It's amazing how many people will argue their way into bankruptcy, right? But in Jan's case, we had already turned daycare into real martial arts students. So it was an easy transition of, your parents are home from work, working from home. You don't need after school transported daycare, but you're still active in all the martial arts. She didn't have even a blip. I think maybe she lost $400 a month in revenue because they were now renewed into her highest level. They were paying for martial arts lessons, not just, needing daycare. When they needed daycare again, they came back for daycare. They kept training one thing or another where, people thinking they were a daycare, some of them lost everybody. And then they're going to be working.
Yeah, the only blip she had was that first month in March. She shut down her marketing, even though we told them to keep doing it, and she shut it down because she didn't think you could do a virtual intro. And then after seeing Amanda Olson do 30 of them in that whole month, then she was like the next month jump back on it, and sure enough, she back over 20 enrollments that April.
Yeah, which again is the virtue of working together in a team of people in a mastermind environment. A whole bunch of $1 million a year school owners who are forward thinking and leaning into it and really learning what's going on, and having a coach looking over your shoulder to give you advice and ideas. And in this case, we were out creating a complete adaptation. I had more fun than I've had in years doing this because March, April, May, it was reinvent everything in a lot of ways. So we did a lot of adaptation to keep everything from black belt extravaganzas, black belt testing, belt testing, buddy events, referral events, all of that stuff just cranking along. And sure, we had a few people for the first 60 days. You mentioned Jan, who had a little bit of a hit on their revenue, but within 90 days, she was back over $100,000 a month with having had a pretty good chunk of that. Well, I think it was 25,000 a month was from transported after school care with nary a blip on that. So the gross, is right up there and cranking along just fine.
And the other thing with our group I found is that we had so many people in different parts of the country that were in a different format. So we had to direct them and say, well, you guys in California who are shut down, or you guys in Florida who are shut down, you need to be doing this. And then you guys in Texas that are open, or you guys. So, states were different. And from March through now, things have been open and closed and half open and partially open. And so they've been constantly having to adjust, even state to state, just to follow your CDC guidelines.
Yeah.
And we've had great success with guys in the other states. In case anybody's hearing Florida or Texas, we're talking members in Peoria, Illinois, doing great. Actually had a goal set to beat last year's numbers. And I think he came just shy of, but obviously cleared his numbers from the previous year. That's Peoria, Illinois. Am I saying that correctly? Then we got Michigan, and then you had brought up the Keys over there in
New Jersey, New York.
New Jersey, absolutely, sir. Yep, I forgot. Yep.
Well, I mean, I think the main point is that the problem wasn't whether it's from
Correct.
completely restricted to not very restricted. There's solutions for all these issues.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, and so sometimes what happens is people hear, we hear this constantly, but people hear some of the stuff that we're telling them. They go, yeah, but you just don't understand our area. Common refrain. And it's really that's just BS. It's ridiculous talking that goes in your own head. And it's your head that's making that assumption, whether you're in, Hawaii or Florida or Maine or California. It doesn't really make any difference. There's a solution to that issue. And instead what people take is, but that's their excuse. So they don't have to really look at the problem or seek out the right help.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and again, I'm always amazed at how people will literally argue with me when I'm saying, okay, you're down 30%, 90 days, we can have you back where you were. In a year, we can have your gross double, your net triple where it was. And they'll argue with me about whether that's accurate or not. And what it is, and I wish I knew who it were attributed to originally, but I heard from Dan Kennedy is, most people would rather have a good excuse than good results, because a good excuse, they have a rationalization for themselves for ongoing failure. I mean, I think that is unfortunately absolutely true. Anyway, we'll take a deep breath, and anybody who has any questions, there is a chat forum, but we really don't pay much attention to that. What we'd like to do is schedule everybody for a one-on-one time where you can put together a little action plan and a New Year's kickoff for you. No charge, no obligation. I put Bob Dunn. Bob, raise your hand again. The guy with all the diving and dog stuff on his wall. Put Bob's phone number there. I also put our direct schedule link. If you prefer, you can just go in and schedule a time first with Bob, and then we'll have myself, Master Moody, Master Smith, all have a time to sit down and really help you put together an action plan.
Yes, sir. And I've left messages too with many of, if not all of you guys. See a couple of new names on here, but yeah, please give me a call. I'm on it. We'll get this set up. Maybe we can reach out.
Yeah, we'd like to schedule a time this week to really help you start off the new year. If there's any questions, just unmute yourself and ask. And if not, we'll keep going because we have no shortage of material here.
Yeah, I mean, everybody should really take the time to do that because you've got probably individual questions, although everything we're talking about really applies to all of you. But you've probably got individual questions about why that may or may not work for you or how we can solve those things. And that's why we need to really take that time with you individually so we can get you on the right track. It's really not that much of a change from what you're doing now, but it's going to make a massive difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and in some cases, it's a massive difference in the front end. Because what we find is, people are so proud of their ninth degree, their eighth degree, who they train with, their lineage, all of that stuff. But oftentimes they really haven't done a deep dive into marketing, what's going to work and what's going to work consistently. Or they get focused in on just one thing or two things that they're doing. And then if that thing gets wiped out, like it did in the spring, for many people, they don't have a plan B. And so I don't think of it as a plan B. I think of it as you have 20, 25 different things going on every month. Different things are going to get full on different months. It's hard to predict what's necessarily going to work or not work at any given time. And again, as an example, this year, Facebook skyrocketed, Google search did great, pay-per-click did great, email did great. Live outbound stuff to the school worked great if you shifted it to Zoom and having a registration form in place of a permission slip. Having a big buddy day at the school or a birthday party at the school. Obviously that didn't happen, but you could do it by Zoom or by webinar. You could do it in the park. And then it worked just as well. So if you take all the different stuff that we would normally do, everything from the most dumb and mundane to putting out bandit signs or whatever you want to call them on the streets, rack cards in the businesses, through to the most sophisticated, multi-step drip campaigns online with text messaging, email, direct mail, with opt-ins coming from Facebook and Google, either organically or pay-per-click. All of that stuff worked just great. In fact, there was a narrow range of marketing things that we would normally do that dried up. And there was a wider range of things that had to have a little bit of an adaptation, not major, but a little bit of adaptation. I love going to an elementary school and doing a PE Teach for the Day where I teach 500 kids. Well, we immediately shifted one of our members here in Colorado, actually, to having 500 kids show up on a live Zoom meeting and getting registrations ahead of time. Suddenly he had 500 fresh leads, and you put that in a drip system, a follow-up system, you put somebody on the phone, all of a sudden you got just a flood of new students when everybody else thinks you can't do anything. The number one thing is not just our industry, but it's every business. We deal with a lot of other business owners in different areas, but the number one thing you've got to avoid is looking around at your peer group, looking around at other people in your city, looking at other people in your organization and going, oh, they're suffering, I must need to suffer too. What you've got to do is you got to be very careful about what your peer group is and only be looking at and comparing yourself with people who are thriving and have the reaction of he or she is thriving. If they can do it in small town Florida, in Mankato, Minnesota, in we could go through the list, Franklin, Tennessee, or in Harlem, in New York City under Comrade de Blasio. If they can do it, well, I mean, they've got a mayor who's trying to kill all businesses. We were out there recently. Jeff and I went to Bernie Carrick's birthday party, and we drove through Manhattan. I got to tell you, it was a ghost town. It was absolutely a ghost town. What has happened in New York City?
We thought we were going to hit rush hour traffic, and it was like nobody. Even in rush hour traffic, there was no rush hour. And usually New York, it's rush hour at all times.
This was 4:15.
Yeah. And
on a weekday.
Yeah, I think the real important thing for everybody that's on the call, the good thing is not only are we telling you that there's so many things that can be done and people are doing it, but for everybody that was going to be here doing that one-on-one school evaluation for you, because you all are on different states. You do have different scenarios. So getting a chance to talk to you one-on-one for a short while. So, if you get a chance to set up the appointment with Bob, that way we can do a call with Master Oliver, myself, or Master Moody, and go through a school evaluation, give you some pointers to tell you exactly what you need to do.
Yeah, free, no obligation, no charge. And we have a huge packet, what we call martial arts stimulus package, that if you haven't gotten, we'll give you that. It includes checklist on how to open when your state is partially open, when your state's completely locked down. And basically, if you're in a freer area, let's say you're in Florida, everyone needs to add 100 new students, or just about everybody, for January, February to kick that off. And that's our focus with our members right now. Our focus in December is all-time record cash results, focused renewal blitz with huge results. Plus, we're having really good enrollments in December here so far too. And then it's in January to add 100 new students in 6 weeks to 90 days. Different people are going to do it in different time frame, but that jump start, it's the old quote I butchered and stole from a copywriter by the name of Gary Halbert is, but really with our industry, there's no problem that you have that can't be solved by adding 100 new students at the right price point. So now, Jeff, you were mentioning some of our members a minute ago. Paul Pendergast is a great example. He's in Brick, New Jersey. If you don't know where Brick, New Jersey is, and I didn't know where Brick, New Jersey is, if you kind of draw a triangle between Atlantic City, Philadelphia, and New York City, he's right on the coast between Atlantic City and New York City. So he's
Got an hour out of New York City south.
Yeah, well, an hour normally, probably 10 minutes now. That it is. I mean, even Merrill Lynch. I think it was Merrill Lynch or Goldman Sachs. I think it's Goldman Sachs is moving their headquarters to Florida. If the stalwarts of Wall Street are abandoning, it's amazing. We were at that party and Rudy Giuliani was there. It's amazing that these mayors can't just follow Rudy's plan, because he took it from the most dangerous city to the safest big city in the country. And now de Blasio is undoing what Bloomberg and Giuliani, I mean, Bloomberg did a great job too, but what Bloomberg and Giuliani did for New York City, it's absolutely amazing. And that was pre-COVID. You overlay COVID and it's amazing. But here you go, you have Paul, who in 2020, in the belly of the beast, right by New York City, Philadelphia, and just north of Atlantic City, is having record months every month in 2020, and that's year over year compared to 2019, compared to 2018. And we've had a number of meetings with him. In fact, I have a lot of them up on YouTube because we just gave away so much free stuff during this thing, try to keep people in business. But he has his association members, people in the same style, who are doing testing together and one thing or another. And all of them are just bitching and whining and complaining and freaked out about this year and down 50% or going out of business, one thing or another. There's just absolutely no reason for that. He said he's almost embarrassed to tell him what his numbers are. I said, well, let's not be embarrassed. Let's give them a bunch of stuff and see if they're smart enough to adapt and rise to the occasion. But
hey, Jesse Thornton, good to see you.
Yeah, there you go.
You're
There's
muted.
Yeah, and I'll remind everybody, feel free to unmute, turn your camera on, and ask any and all questions. Jesse, you have any questions or comments so far? You're talking to yourself. The hand gestures make it animated, but I don't think that was sign language and not, well, Jeff.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened to my computer. I couldn't hear a word y'all were saying, but
our lips
and you missed a ton of pearls of wisdom. I've got to tell you.
I know it. I hope y'all recorded it so I can go back and look at it.
We are. It's live on the Facebook group, so the recording will be there, and
Okay.
And we're recording it so you can click on the same link after this, and Zoom will replay it for you as well.
Thank you. I truly appreciate that. I would like to, you all have been talking about the intros that you all do, how you do them. And I was real interested in being able to see one so that I could do that. Cause it's totally different from what I do. And so I would really like to be able to do that. And Master Smith, I did raise my prices that we talked about.
All right. Good job. How you doing, Master Thornton? Good to see you.
Good to see you all. It's a blessing to be here.
Yeah. Let's start with the first question, Jesse. Is in that martial arts stimulus package, we do have, I believe, descriptions and probably, I think, video of a live virtual intro. We've had several of the members who are doing well, including Amanda and her son Keith, record them. So at least for our members, we have that. I believe in that stimulus package we're giving away, which is, I mean, it's everything you need to know to thrive during this crazy time, right? right?
And Master Oliver, Master Thornton has the Complete Fill Your School program.
Oh,
So
good.
I'll set that link up here for everybody else too. But we also have the video in there, Master Thornton, on the with the whole intro process. Actually, with Elite MMA doing an adult intro, and then Master Oliver doing a pretend family enrollment intro.
He was, I think he was more directed towards how you do a virtual intro.
Right.
Oh, I got you. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Have that foundation, it's a good start.
Yeah, but let me give you the short answer to that, Jesse, is this. Is you take everything that you were doing, assuming it was working, everything you were doing before, and you do it exactly the same way you were doing it before. It's just they click a link to join you on Zoom rather than they physically walk into the school.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And so now that sounds too simplistic. You do have to have a registration link to get like the student information form filled out, right? But then
Yes, sir.
what you do is you do, let's say, a private first intro on Zoom. What we normally would do is a private or a semi-private first intro. Then we would put them into a small group class. In other words, the beginner class. And then we would pull them out of that beginner class and do the enrollment. Now, in the Zoom environment, we found that although you can break them into a breakout room and do it, we found that was more awkward than, tap them on the shoulder and pull them in the office. So most of the schools adapted where it was do the intro, private or semi-private. I mean, semi-private means it could be 4 or 5 people, enough that you could interact with them. And then schedule them for the small group beginner class on Zoom, and then pre-schedule a third private class, which is then going to, in fact, be the enrollment conference.
Which will
So
be, you call it we call it an evaluation. So we can evaluate how the student did. So that way the parents get to know how he did. We get to find out how he likes it. And then we show them how to get enrolled.
Well, yeah, but what I don't do is say, I'm going to schedule for a third time so we can sit down and talk about money.
Now,
Okay.
that's why they'll always put that off.
Yeah,
But-
we schedule them for first class, second class, third class, where normally we would be doing the enrollment right after the second class or pulling them out during, right? And
Right.
that doesn't negate, I mean, assuming I have, a little bit of staff, I can have the beginner class going on and I can send them an invitation to a breakout room, and I can take them into a breakout room and do the enrollment, assuming I have both parents, right? What we
Yes,
were
sir.
finding though, is that if I didn't already have that third appointment pre-scheduled, too many people were falling through the cracks by not understanding, join the breakout room, by not going in there, or by staffing getting to be difficult and they just weren't pulling them in adequately, right? So the fail-safe is intro, group class with a third time scheduled. The third time scheduled, you're not saying, that's when we're going to sit down and just talk about money, or we're just going to sit down and talk about the program. What you are saying is, we'll do a little review of the first couple classes, do a little private class and evaluation, and then if you want to keep Joey going, we'll go through the details and structure of that as well if you want, right? So it's very, very personable, not going to scare them off, right? And the huge mistake that people would make is trying to suddenly become an internet marketing genius, do an online registration page, change it to a 6-week program, change it to they're going to pay $99 just for Zoom classes, change their pricing. All of that's bunk. You don't do any of that. You do exactly what you were normally doing.
Right.
Intro the way you were normally doing it, second the way you were normally doing it. The only exception is you want to pre-schedule that other time. The huge mistake is let them come in and say, I'll give you a call back to schedule your next time. Or, give me a call and we'll schedule your next time, because that's when they get lost.
Yes, sir.
Are you teaching any virtual classes now?
Well, we had stopped that because we were having issues trying to get someone to help me with it, because a lot of my staff is sick right now. And like the last week, I've been by myself.
Yeah.
And so that was the biggest problem that I've been having is lack of staff to do so.
Well,
Now,
Well,
was it needed somebody to help you for the technical aspects of it, or somebody to help you teach the class?
Teaching the class.
Okay.
are you doing two separate classes, or are you doing the class at the same in person
Simulcast.
simulcast, or are you doing virtual
Yeah.
classes and regular classes at the same time?
The same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so here's where we started out from day one is I've been telling people and they didn't like to hear this. I mean, it wasn't welcomed by anybody, but I've been telling them we're probably on having Zoom remote classes until July next year. And what happened when states started opening up a little bit, you know, and doesn't matter where you are. I mean, our school in Tennessee has 90% of their students attending live. Brick, New Jersey even has, I think, 85% attending live. But when states start opening up and letting social distance, clean, check the temperature, all that stuff happen, 6 feet, people wanted to get off of Zoom. And they had this frame of they like hated Zoom. And what I've been telling them is no, you're going to have the spectrum. You're going to have some people, it's going to have to be 3 vaccines and 2 cures. And the last known case was 2 months ago before they're ever going to go in public, especially something like a fitness center or a martial arts school, right? And then
Right.
you have the other end of the spectrum that they're just like, I'm over this. I don't care. You know, go back to normal, have 100 people jammed in for the belt graduation. I don't give a crap. And they're pissed off that they have to wear a mask, right? What you've got to do is you've got to accommodate that spectrum and not force anybody out the door because they're on either extreme, knowing that most of them are going to be somewhere in between, right? I mean,
Right.
you know, I'm on the end of the spectrum that, you know, every Democratic governor in the country seems to be trying to kill off all small businesses. That's, you know, my underlying belief system. And I'm on the spectrum of they're allowing us to open a little bit. Great. We're going to do school printed masks. We're going to have a gallon of hand sanitizer at the front. We're going to require everybody to wash their hands. We're going to check their temperatures on the way in. We're going to mark out the floor so everybody stays 6 or 8 feet apart. When we can do it in the park, we'll do it in the park. We're going to simulcast every class live and on video. And we're going to have remote training tools. Rev Marketing has a great platform for that, where we're going to have videos they can learn from and assignments and reviews that they can do. And we're going to do all of the above. What we knew immediately, and a lot of our friends made this mistake. What we knew immediately is posting a series of videos for students to practice at home while they were unable to come into the class doesn't work. Never has worked. All you have to do, I've heard some high-profile gurus, I'll put that in quotes, talking about, you know, well, that's what we should be doing. We should be doing all pre-recorded videos, and they sign up for a subscription, and we can't charge $300 a month. It's got to be $19 a month. Well, that's dumb, because every business that does that with volume has a flush everybody out within 90 days format. They're constantly feeding it in, constantly feeding people out. That's just what happens. And then they try to figure out how to make the billing at the lowest level possible that people who haven't used it in 2 months aren't going to go bother to try to cancel it. That's their business model. So that was always a stupid idea. And we saw some very, you know, I got to tell you, friends of ours, very high profile school owners, a lot of them out trying to pitch their ideas out in the industry. They were flailing. They had no idea what to do. And they were basically curled up in their corner, sucking their thumb, telling people to go get as much government money as they could. Well, that was a really bad strategy. Master Smith will tell you some of the top guys in the industry were down 50% and thought they had done a good job being down 50%. That's just ridiculous. You know, we had 95% of our our members are even plus or minus 5% over last year. Some of them have had record years this year, especially July, August, September, October have had record years this year. And admittedly, we had 4 or 5. In fact, a couple of them were, one was getting messages from my elite about how he should curl up in a ball and suck his thumb, and messages from me about, no, you can thrive, and managed to probably put himself out of business. So, it's all of this has been mental, and it's been listening to the right voices. I've said for years that there's this absolute bozo explosion of our industry of people who have a little bit of expertise who try to pitch their wares, or folks who just really don't know much beyond the personality-driven aspect of them running a school. And it really comes out in a situation like this where the adaptation rate has just been pitiful. And some of the advice that we've seen always, but especially this year, has just been laughable.
Laughable and dangerous and negligent. I think this year especially.
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. So anyway, Jesse, any other questions, or anybody else have any questions? We've got about 9 minutes here. We'll have to wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get off too. I've got class fixing start in just a few minutes also. But thank you all so much. I'm sorry I couldn't hear what was going on, but I will go back and look at it, and then I will write some questions down. I'll give you or Mr. Dunn or Master Smith, what do you guys are called?
Schedule a time with Bob, and
Yes,
we'll set a time to do that. And
Okay.
really get you an update.
Can you put your phone up there, Bob?
It's up there.
Okay.
Oh, I've got it.
It's in the chat box. In the chat box, which is the only thing we're
Okay.
using it for.
Could
I
we
put,
could we go ahead and see if some people would like to go ahead and set an appointment for them while they're on here now? Anybody, if you want to put your camera on, and then schedule a time that we can actually work with you, because it looks like, everybody's from a different state and things are a little different. So we want to make sure that we can do a good evaluation and give you some pointers on what our people are doing in your state. And I think that could help you even better, because sometimes we've told somebody to do a certain thing and then they say, well, we can't do that in our state. So that's why there are certain guidelines that we can do everywhere, but there are certain things that we have to make adjustments for your state.
Yeah.
And Master
Thank
Oliver,
you all. I hate to
Thanks,
go,
Jeff.
but I've got to go.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Jesse.
God
care.
bless.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Give Bob a call.
Bye-bye. Take care, Jeff.
Okay. So
And if I could, Master Oliver, if you don't mind, is it okay if I ship them out? Anybody who obviously I get to chat with, the 2 books that we have,
absolutely.
I'll send them personally and hard copy to them. So looking forward to connecting with you. Obviously, my phone number's up there. I've reached out to everyone that's put in a good number. And if you could share me a number, if you didn't put a number in, give me a call.
Yeah, you were missing a couple of numbers, weren't you?
Yes, sir. Mr. Siegel, who was on here, he was from Germany. So I was having a hard time with him. And then Mr. Alvarez, I don't have a really good number for Mr. Jose Alvarez.
Yeah. So if you guys wouldn't mind unmuting and sharing that with Bob, and we'll get you all of that free material. Or
Yeah, and I don't even have a good shipping address for Mr. Alvarez. So I'd love to send him out those books as well.
Absolutely.
And can you unmute Jose or turn your camera on?
May not be there, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's take a few more minutes to do a little wrap up.
Jennifer put her information in the chat box for you.
Yes, sir. I did
There
see
you go.
that. And Russ,
And anybody else,
Where's
if
your
you want to
email
put
address?
your number or any of your information there in the chat box, that was helpful, Jennifer, to let us know that you're doing jujitsu. Anything like that, where you're located, you're doing jujitsu. Russ put his number down. Any of that information is helpful if we know what state you're in, so we know ahead of time what.
Yeah, we need to verify mailing addresses so we can mail out the package, as well as have a good phone number. And then you guys give Bob a call, But if we don't have a good phone number, we need a good phone number so we can schedule. an appointment.
Where in Texas, Jennifer?
Texarkana, sir.
Okay. I'm from Texas originally, but I'm down in South Texas, but always went through Texarkana on my way to Missouri.
Yeah, that's closer to where all my relatives are from. Yeah. But anyway, so let's wrap up with a couple of things here.
Thanks, Russ, for that, Indianapolis. What style, Russ? Just put it in the chat box. Thanks. Go ahead, Master Oliver.
I was getting ready to exercise director authority and mute your ass, but we'll just.
Well, I thought this information, anything that we have ahead of time would be helpful. And we don't have to unmute them to do it. If they can just type it in on the right would be helpful.
Well, yeah, what we need to do is schedule an appointment with everybody, but what we end up with is some bad addresses. We need to confirm addresses to mail free information out, and we need to schedule a time to, and again, it'll be one-on-one to give you some direct action steps. And again, no sales pitch or anything. If you're a good fit, and I see about 10% of the people who registered for this webinar would be a good fit for us to work together on an ongoing basis. A lot of others aren't quite at that point yet. Typically, we're working with schools that are, say, $250,000 a year and up. We've kind of adjusted that downward to people who used to be $250,000 and up, who screwed it up to begin with, and now they're down because there's a number, unfortunately, that didn't get good advice in March, April, May. So we want to help you get back to where you were. Typically, that's about a 90-day process, even if you're down 50%. We got to obviously get back everybody you lost and add 100 new students to jumpstart thing. Really is the plan. But here's a little bit of a summary. When we're working with a new member who's part of our team, is really what they're doing is working with a whole bunch of top 1% schools, U.S., UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, heavily dominant US, of course, but really top 1% schools. I've heard, I heard one of the other bozo consultants, he and like 3 other people were sitting around and, basically had said, well, I hear these people talk about $1 million schools, but there really is no such thing. I mean, that's just BS. Huh. No such thing. Well, I don't know what the count is, but I think we've got 15 or 20 that are easily doing between 80 and in single school location, 80 and 130 or 40 per month without transported after school care. We have one transported after school care member who's doing $8 million a year between 4 locations, but just martial arts. And so anybody who has small enough thinking to think that a school can't gross 80 to 100,000 a month or more just doesn't know what they're talking about. They're an idiot to begin with. Then that should be 50 to 60, 65% net. So if you're grossing 80,000 a month, you should be netting at least $500,000. And I can't tell you how many conversations we've had. Remember, one of them, Jeff, was at Annapolis. Yeah. I don't need all this stuff right now. My problem is the IRS wants me to write them a check for $250,000. We've got a number of them that have had such a jump in their income that's their problem. But as a little recap, and we'll call it a day, you got to have 20 things going on marketing wise. And I don't mean, ESC used to have this thing, 5/15. On the 15th of the month, choose 5 things you're going to do. And on the list was order bumper stickers for students to put on the car and order t-shirts for them to wear around. Not talking about stupidity like that. What I'm talking about is stuff that's really going to convert. Paid Facebook advertising that converts to opt-ins or leads, that converts to appointments, that converts to intros. Paid pay-per-click, robust search engine that converts to opt-ins, that converts to people making appointments, that converts to intros. Elementary school outreach, not the dumbassery of the theft of my gym teacher for the day that ended up being called school talks, but really going out and getting a group of people on Zoom or in person where you've got parents that filled out permission slips and you have all the information. And then you can reach out to them, they can reach out to you. But they're mostly not going to reach out to you. Pass out all the flyers you want. You've got to have their contact information to add them into a drip system, email, text messaging, direct mail, live outbound calls, so that you convert them to intros and ultimately to students. But you got to have like 20 things going on that are really likely to work. And if you want 20 new students a month, that's what you got to do. You've got to have that going on. And I got to tell you, some of these things are home runs. We had people who have 100 leads from Facebook in a month. We have people who had, I think record was 850 in a weekend leads from one event. But regardless of that, you got to have a bunch of stuff going on. With new clients, what we do is we start at the opposite end a little bit, is we start with pricing, program structure, because almost everybody is undercharging and structured poorly. Then we look at lead to enrollment ratios and get to know the numbers and know what's going on and really fix that, because most people are just shooting in the dark. They're operating in the cloud. So we fix that, and then we open the spigot. And the internal dialogue about that has become drinking from a fire hose, pouring more new students in a month than they're used to having in a year. But if we don't do the other two things first, it's all wasted effort, because I can't tell you how many people we've turned on, let's say, the Facebook advertising, and they had 85 new leads and they got 1 enrollment. And then they might say, oh, that Facebook stuff is flaky. No, their systems were hosed, right? We had to go back and fix the systems before that works. Or we do, like the example, 850 leads in 1 live event. Well, that doesn't do you any good if you don't have all the pieces in place. So you're really going to do it. So those are the 3 pieces that we always start with, is fixing the pricing and program structure, fixing the intro process and really knowing the numbers, and then going back and opening the spigot and drinking from a fire hose for new intro traffic. On a longer term basis, we always work on getting the dropout rate down to 1 or 2% a month. Best I've ever seen was like 0.7% dropout rate. In other words, a school with 500 students needs, 5 people a month, or actually 3.5 people a month to stay even. What's normal in our industry, frankly, I mean, I saw one that was doing 35% a month loss and thought he was doing great. But what's normal in our industry is maybe 7 or 8% loss a month. And I hear some otherwise bright people, who are the gurus, who say, oh no, you can't do anything better than 7% a month. You're gonna lose 7% a month. If you have 300 people, you need 21. My friend Tim Kovar, for their school, they had this 850 square foot or 850 active student school. He called it feeding the beast, because if they didn't do 50 or 60 enrollments a month, they were losing ground. We're legitimately getting MMA schools, adult Muay Thai schools, kids schools at 1% a month, 1.5% a month, maybe 2% a month loss, which is completely doable. So then we start working on that. We start working on staff development, and then we start working on the renewal process and really develop black belts who are high quality in a high quality school, once you've figured out how to put as many people in a month as you need. Now, Smith, Mindy, we've let you sit there mute the entire time, but anybody have anything to finish up and wrap up on that?
I think that's a good way to wrap up. Is it's about high quality black belts. It's about all these pieces, and there's nothing in anything that we're doing that's not about having high quality service for our students and high quality results in terms of really good martial arts. And that is congruent with having lots of students and having really good results in terms of sales and good income in the school. And anybody that tells you anything different about, if you have more sales or you have more volume, it's going to lower quality, is missing the boat in all these pieces. So I think what you said, Master Oliver, is really a good wrap up for what we've talked about today.
Yeah, and the broke idiots use the "I don't want to sell out" excuse as a way to stay broke. It's again one of those, I'd rather have a good excuse than good results deal. What we're doing is developing higher quality black belts than ever, higher quality student service than ever. Student retention is not the same as keeping people who don't develop well. It's learning how to be a good teacher and a leader. So on that note, I will remind everybody, give Bob a call, 720-256-0208. It's been in the chat room here. or go to martialartswealth.com/schedule, and you can schedule an appointment. What we want to do is give you a lot of free support and ideas. Also, verify your mailing address so we can mail that packet of information, and we'll give you that full martial arts stimulus package, which is a ton of video checklist on how to operate effectively, tremendous, more marketing ideas than you can possibly use, and all the stuff you need to thrive. You know, just don't get comfortable. We've got easily December, January, February is going to be in the same mode of lockdowns and all of this stuff. My guess is you're going to have to keep the Zoom classes running at least until June or July. Things might start to get back to normal in May, but there's going to be people who have been scared to death watching CNN and CNBC and Fox and NBC and, you know, and listening to the politicians during the last election run. There's going to be people who are scared to death. There's right wingers and left wingers who don't want to take a vaccine. There's people who aren't going to leave their house for fear that, you know, that their 12-year-old who's practically immune to this stuff is going to die. So you've got to be on full operations with this stuff until probably July, and have classes in the park, virtual classes, virtual intros, all of that stuff. You know, don't get off of it when most of your students are back in, because there's a lot of opportunity on the other end for people who aren't quite there yet.
And,
on that note, we'll call it a day.
I think, Master Oliver, Jose Alvarez is the only one that Bob doesn't have contact information on. So if he would like that personal school evaluation and that free package, just call Bob. That number again is